Hello, and welcome to the October edition of Region 15's Equity and Inclusion Read Aloud in our newsletter. Starting this edition and each month from now on, our Read Aloud will feature guests from our Region 15 community. This month, I am so honored to be sharing this Read Aloud in the company of three fabulous guests and also Region 15 students, Grace, Catherine, and Allie. In thinking about the upcoming presidential election, as well as Region 15's focus on inclusivity and diversity, we wanted to be mindful about uplifting the beautiful and important contributions of people who have been historically underrepresented. So now I'll turn it over to our guests to introduce themselves and say a little bit more about the book that we selected.
Hi, my name is Grace Mombo, and I'm a freshman at Pomfret High School.
Hi, my name is Allie McNerney, and I'm a 7th grader at Memorial Middle School. I've had the privilege of knowing and being friends with these two girls for many years. We've actually been next door neighbors and close friends for about 8 years, and I'm super excited to collaborate with them on this.
Hi, my name is Catherine Mombo, and I'm a freshman at Pomfret High School. Today we will be reading She Was the First, The Trailblazing Life of Shirley Chisholm. Shirley Chisholm was the first Black woman to win a seat in Congress, and later was the first Black woman to run for president. This book is relevant with the recent nomination of Kamala Harris, who, if elected, would be the first African American and Indian American woman to serve in the second highest office. Right now is a groundbreaking time for both women and people of color to have their voices heard, which is what we are hoping to do today by reading the story. We hope you enjoy.
While we're reading today, we'll ask discussion questions at certain parts. When you hear a discussion question, we encourage you to pause and have conversation with the person or the people that you're watching this video with.
Before we start reading, there's two discussion questions we'd like to ask you to talk about. First of all, what do you know about women in politics, and who are some famous female politicians that you know? What are some issues that they cared about? Second, Shirley Chisholm was modeled persistence. What does it mean to be persistent? How do you demonstrate persistence even though something can be challenging? Do you think persistence can be learned? How so?
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and we are going to get going with the read aloud.
She was the first, the trailblazing life of Shirley Chisholm. To anyone who's dreamed of doing anything, to anyone who's dreamed of doing something that other people say is silly or impossible, go ahead and try. Create your own path to be a trailblazer like Shirley Chisholm. For Shirley Chisholm and the people and the often overlooked people of the West Indian community who have made valuable contributions to American history and culture. On a cold November day in 1924, Shirley Anita St. Hill came into this world. Back then, nobody had an inkling that she would open a door to history. Shirley, the oldest of the St. Hill girls, was a handful for her mother. And Papa, from the time she was little, Shirley liked to be in charge. At 3, she was already leading children twice her age around the neighborhood, telling them where to go and what games to play. Listen to me, Shirley said, and they did. The St. Hill family lived in Brooklyn, New York. Papa was a baker's helper, and Mother was a seamstress and domestic worker. They barely earned enough money to keep food in the cupboards and supper on the table. Mother and Papa made a tough decision. They would send the girls to live with Mother's family on the Caribbean island of Barbados. While the children were away, Papa and Mother would save their money, and Shirley and her sisters would get a taste of country living. In 1928, Shirley, her sisters, and mother boarded an ocean liner named the Valencia. After 9 rocky days at sea, they arrived in Barbados. From the port, they rode a rickety bus to Grandmother Emmeline's farm. Shirley spotted her grandmother right away. The thin West Indian woman stood tall as a reed, and she looked like serious business.
Island life was nothing like city living. The days were as hot as an oven, and every night Shirley heard an animal concert of chirps, clucks, and moos. Her new home also had something Shirley had never seen, an outhouse. Mother stayed for a few months to make sure the girls were settled in. Then she had to go back to Brooklyn to help Papa. The day mother left, everyone's faces were wet with tears. Grandmother Emmeline's house was stocked with love, rules, and chores. Fetch the well water, feed the animals, graze the cows. When they finished, Shirley, her sisters, and her cousins enjoyed a special treat. They raced to the beach, ran through the sand, and jumped into the clear blue water. To Shirley, the ocean felt like a warm magic. The local school was a one-room building with more than 100 children ages 4 to 11. The teachers were strict and punished students who did not behave. Shirley was a fast learner. She could read and write before she turned 5. Barbados was filled with people with brown skin like Shirley's. She saw teachers, preachers, and shopkeepers taking care of island business. Seeing them, Shirley understood that when she grew up, she could take charge and get things done too. A discussion question. After reading on this page, Shirley saw people with brown skin like her taking charge and getting things done, which helped her understand that she too could do that as she grew up. Who are some role models that are inspiring to you, and what about them is inspiring? 7 years went by. Mother and Papa were still struggling to earn money. The Great Depression of the 1930s made it hard for them to find steady jobs. But no matter, Mother wanted her girls back home. In 1934, the year Shirley turned 10, she and her sisters moved back to Brooklyn and a different life. The city was crowded with automobiles, tall buildings, fast-moving people, and a confusing maze of streets. During the icicle cold winters, Shirley shivered thinking about the warm Barbados sunshine.
At her new school, Shirley got a sad surprise. Instead of starting 6th grade, she was put back into 4th grade. Shirley's schooling in Barbados had been excellent, but the teachers in Brooklyn said she didn't know enough US history. Shirley was upset and embarrassed, and bored. Sometimes when the teacher wasn't looking, Shirley threw spitballs and snapped rubber bands at the younger kids in her class. Once her teacher realized why Shirley misbehaved, the school gave her a tutor. In time, Shirley learned all the history she needed to catch up with her classmates. Discussion question. As learners and people, it is important for us to be able to think critically about what is fair. Stop to talk about your thoughts about Shirley initially being placed in 4th grade back in New York when she was in 6th grade in Barbados, simply because she was missing particular facts from US history. What was problematic about this decision? How could the school have handled this situation differently? Education was important in the St. Hill home. The girls made regular trips to the library to borrow books. When the holidays came, Shirley was sure to receive a book as a present. Every evening, the family dinner table came alive. Papa talked first. Shirley listened closely and asked questions as he discussed world events. Papa read 3 newspapers every day. He was full of information. When Papa's friends stopped by, Shirley stayed up late and listened through the bedroom door. The men talked for hours about world leaders and politics. Papa said that everyone should be treated the same: poor, rich, black, white. Papa's words stirred something inside Shirley. She started paying more attention to current events. In high school, Shirley earned top grades and was accepted at several colleges. She chose Brooklyn College, just a subway ride away from her home. The school was bigger than any she had ever attended. There were so many students. Shirley loved her classes. Her brain buzzed with new information about other countries, foreign languages, and different culture. She joined the Harriet Tubman Society, a club where she learned more about Black history. And nobody was surprised when Shirley signed up for the debate team. She could out-talk anybody. After her schoolwork was done, Shirley enjoyed going to parties and dancing. Shirley wanted to use her education to make the country and the world better for everyone. But how? Her favorite teacher, Professor Warsaw, knew Shirley was a great debater. He suggested that she give politics a try. Shirley had doubts. She loved children, so she decided to be a school teacher instead of a politician. She would make a difference by helping children. After she finished college in 1946, Shirley had a hard time finding a job. Most doors were closed to her because she was Black and she was a woman. Plus, she was very short. "Don't judge me by my size," Shirley insisted at an interview to be a nursery school teacher. "Give me a chance." Shirley got the job. During the day, Shirley worked with children. In the evenings, she worked with community groups. Shirley noticed that people with power and money didn't seem to care about folks who were poor. This bothered her. She remembered how it felt to be poor, so she spoke up and tried to make a difference for people who didn't have the power or money. One time, Shirley encouraged the women in a local group to stand up to the men and demand respect. Another time, she noticed the officials in charge of a meeting were ignoring everyone waiting in line to ask questions. Shirley rushed to the front and made sure that everyone was allowed to talk. In the middle of all this work, Shirley found love. In 1949, she married Conrad Chisholm, a private investigator. He was handsome, smart, and crazy about Shirley. In the 1950s and 60s, Shirley joined many organizations. Some local leaders and politicians didn't like her ideas. They called her a troublemaker because she stood up for women and people of color. But the people who needed help were glad Shirley was on their side, fighting to make sure they were treated fairly. By 1964, Shirley's heart told her it was time to step into politics. She had a gift. People listened when she talked. Her words motivated them to action. Shirley decided to take a chance and run for New York State Assembly. She won.
After Shirley became an assemblywoman, she worked to help the people of New York. She worked to pass laws to help sick people get the medicine they needed. She worked to make sure landlords kept the heat on in the winter. She worked to help people find jobs and to raise pay for workers. Including those who cleaned houses like her mother. She worked to help poor students pay for college. Shirley didn't say or do things just to be popular. She fought for what she believed was right and not what was easy. She followed grandmother Emmeline's advice, always speak the truth. Four years later, Shirley decided to run for the US Congress. She promised to help people all across the country. Some of the men in Congress tried to keep Shirley out. They all scolded her and said that women didn't belong in politics. One of her opponents called her a little school teacher. Many people said they would never vote for a woman. Shirley dusted off the mean talk. She kept meeting with people and asking them to vote for her. Her campaign slogan was unbrought and unbossed. Shirley's hard work paid off. In 1968, she was the first Black woman elected to Congress. In the House of Representatives, Shirley kept her promise. She worked for laws that helped women, children, students, poor people, farm workers, Native people, and others who were often pushed aside. She fought for healthcare. She spoke up for military veterans. She spoke out against war. Discussion question: what does Shirley's slogan, unbrought and unbossed, mean? Why do you think Shirley kept up with this to be her slogan? What does it reflect for her? How does it reflect her work and her stance as a politician? While in Congress, Shirley gave many speeches, and people of every color and background liked her ideas for change. But Shirley wanted to take her message to an even bigger audience. So in 1972, she decided to seek the highest political office in the United States. Shirley was the first Black person, Democrat or Republican, to run for president. Shirley's campaign was full of ups and downs. Although many people helped her and followed the Chisholm Trail, their support wasn't enough. Shirley didn't win the nomination, but her work paved the way for the future, for the first Black president of the United States, and one day, the first woman president. Shirley Anita St. Hill Chisholm opened a door to history.
There's a lot of important biographical information in the back of this book. We will include a link to this book below, so please check it out.
We'd like to end with one more question for you to talk about. In the text, the author, Catherine Russell Brown, writes, "Shirley didn't say or do things just to be popular. She fought for what she believed was right, not what was easy." What do you think these statements mean? Why do you think Shirley Chisholm did these things? How does this relate to you in your own life? Thank you so much for joining us for this read aloud and discussion. Below the link to this video in the newsletter, we included some ideas to continue the learning inspired by our read aloud today, and we hope that you try one out. Grace, Allie, and Catherine, thank you so much for being with us today. It was such a treat to be read to by you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.